I will be right back. I'm going to go check on another session real quick.
Sounds good. Hope everybody's doing well. I think we're waiting for somebody from Indiana CEC to jump on and say hello. But if that doesn't happen in the next minute or two, we'll just start. How's that sound? If you don't mind, those that can hear this in the chat, put in who you are and what kind of job you have, and I can try to tailor my remarks for that as I see who's here. Oh, there's our host. Hello.
Hello. Okay, we can go ahead and get started. One. Okay. Hello, my name is Christy Troutman, and I am going to be the moderator for today. Welcome to the Breaking Down Barriers for Symposium presented by the Indiana Council for Educational Children. Thank you for joining us today. This session will be recorded to share out after the conclusion of the symposium. We are hopeful that you are going to walk away with valuable information that will help you in your role supporting staff, students, and the entire school community. Before we begin, I just want to make you aware that questions should be entered in Q&A. At the end of this session, we will allow the presenter to answer as many questions as time will permit. Sessions will be recorded and will be shared after the symposium has ended. Keep an eye out for an email from the Indiana Council for Exceptional Children. At the end of today's symposium, you will be asked to complete an exit ticket. We invite that you provide feedback, which is valuable, which is a valuable gift to us. Now I am pleased to introduce Michael J. Kennedy.
Okay, we ready?
Michael J. Kennedy's main area of research is the design, implementation, and experimental testing of multimedia-based interventions to support pre- and in-service teachers' knowledge and implementation of evidence-based practices. He has designed and experimentally tested numerous multimedia products intended to support teacher and student outcomes. Kennedy is the head of the Stormed Lab, supporting teachers through coaching, observations, and multimedia to educate students with disabilities. Before completing his doctoral studies, Kennedy was a high school special education teacher for 6 years and an elementary level teacher for 3 years. He has published over 65 peer-reviewed articles and received over $15 million in total grants to develop and study processes for supporting teacher and school leader implementation of evidence-based multimedia. Kennedy was an inaugural winner of the Early Career Research and Mentoring Grant Competition from the Institute for Education Sciences in 2013. He is co-editor of the Journal of Education Technology and chair of UVA's Faculty Senate. Kennedy was awarded in 2021 Ted Pearson's Excellence in Teaching Education Award and UVA's Alumni Board of Trustee Award for Excellence in University Teaching in 2015. Okay.
All right. Well, when you say it like that, it sounds so exciting. I don't know about all of that, especially that faculty senate part. I could do without that. All right, thanks everybody for being here today. You see the official title of this is the behavior high leverage practices, because we all have a student like this in our life, whether currently a student in our class or somewhere in our school. So we'll talk about ways that are evidence-based and within the HLP structure to help support. This fun picture is me on the Sydney Harbor Bridge. I had the chance to go to Sydney last year, and they do this thing called the bridge climb. And what that means is you climb the outer structure of the bridge. Like the arrow is pointing to where this picture was taken. It is so high and crazy. And I got up there and the photographer is like, okay, hey, you made it to the top. Raise your hands in victory. And I'm like, no, I am not letting go of these rails ever. It was quite a scene to go up there, but I'm glad I did. And I was more glad that I got down. All right, thank you to Indiana CEC for having me, but thank you more to you, educators, administrators, family members from around Indiana. I know how difficult your positions are, having been a teacher for 9 years myself, being the father of a child with a disability. I'm always thinking about ways that we can support one another in our ridiculously difficult tasks that we have in front of us. And I hope that my comments today will be useful as we move forward. So one of the first things I want to talk about is sort of the concept of saving and investing. So we save for our kids' college. I've got a freshman in college right now. I can't believe how much money it costs. Saving for retirement, which I will never make enough money to be able to do buying a new house. We will live in the house we live in now because we can't afford to move anywhere else. You know how all this goes, right? Well, the more money we put in, the better off and closer to any of those goals we might be. And the high leverage practices are a lot like that. It is an investment in your practice to help your teaching become more effective, to help your students' learning, behavior, and other functioning to also become more effective. So that's the way I look at sessions like this throughout your time in your PD today at this terrific conference. All of this is an investment. Everything that you can take away and learn is yet another chance for you to bank information that can help you to succeed in the future. If you're not familiar with the High Leverage Practices website, please go to highleveragepractices.org, and you'll be able to find a whole slew of free materials, including the video series for each of the HLPs that I created. And there's other materials that are there as well. So please check that out when you have a chance. So let's talk about some high leverage practices related to effective classroom management. This is the behavior domain of the HLPs, HLPs 7, 8, 9, and 10. And I'll talk about each of those in our hour together today. Before I jump in, let's start at the end. Let's give the key messages. If you find me quite boring, that's okay, it happens. But these are the big takeaways. You haven't lost interest yet, I hope. So let's talk about these key outcomes, and then I'll go into depth about each of them. The first one is to explicitly teach expectations and social skills on a regular basis and treat behavior problems like learning problems. When kids make a mistake in mathematics or reading, we don't give a behavioral referral or send them to the office. You know, that's silly, right? But we do it with behavior, and kids make errors with their behavior the exact same way they make errors with math and with reading. And so we have to take time to explicitly teach and reteach what it is exactly we're looking for when it comes to the behavior, exactly the same way we would do as if it was reading or mathematics. The second one is all the high leverage practices and evidence-based practices in the world won't matter if you and your students don't have shared trust and respect. We'll talk about ways that you can foster this, but if you figure out ways that these kids don't like you and they don't respect, and they know that they don't trust you and you don't trust them, you don't respect them, it's not going to matter what you do. It's all going to fall apart. We'll talk about that. Feedback is one of the best things you can do. It's life-giving, positive feedback to kids. And stop thinking about feedback as an event. Feedback isn't when you say yes or good or keep going. It is, but that's not all it is. Feedback should be a process, not just an event, something you say to kids after they do something. And then from Walt Whitman or Ted Lasso, if you're a Ted Lasso fan, be curious, not judgmental. Have you played a lot of darts, Ted? To which I would answer, yes, I have. And in playing those darts, I realized that understanding behavior is communication, and then acting on that accordingly is one of the most important things that's transformed my life as an educator, a father, a collaborator. I'm always thinking about what are my colleagues saying, what are my students saying with their behavior, and then realizing that even when they're not being very efficient with their messaging, they're still communicating something. When the kid kicks over his desk in class, he's communicating something, not very efficiently, not very appropriately, but there's still a message there. And I need to be able to interpret what it is. And so being curious about why people are acting the way that they are and not being judgmental is really critical. We'll get into it. Okay, if you don't have access to this document, I recommend everybody go and find it and download it. You can get it on the pbis.org website. But if you just Google in supporting and responding to behavior, Brandy Simonson, who's a professor at the University of Connecticut, you'll find this document, and it's really terrific. It's an easy read, OSEP sponsored, and you'll be able to track it down. And I think you'll find it useful within your team. Within that document, they talk about these 5 key practices that should be used to support student behavior: explicitly teaching and reteaching expectations, providing prompts and pre-corrections, providing behavior-specific praise and feedback, providing multiple and varied opportunities for students to respond to your prompts, and providing behavior-specific redirections. I'm going to talk about each of these in the next few minutes. These classroom management practices, these 5 practices, provide a continuum of supports that you can use to help promote success for your students. What I mean by that is being proactive about classroom management, not just waiting until something bad happens and then knowing what to do and how to respond, but instead setting up your classroom environment where I'm predicting that things are going to happen and I'm going to make specific moves to help them be successful is what's needed. Okay, so I'm putting safeguards in place that I'm expecting things to happen, and I already know what I'm going to do. It's when you're caught off guard by a student's behavior that you're most likely to say, get out, or some version of get out. And that's really what we don't want. We don't want kids being sent out of the room. We don't want a negative interaction between him and me, because that's going to damage the relationship. And as you saw from my first 4 key bullet points, protecting the relationship is just about the most important thing you can do. All right, so let's get into explicitly teaching and reteaching routines and expectations. There are 4 key practices to do this. We want to give a clear introduction, we want to model, we want to provide guided practice, and we want to give independent practice. You might be saying to yourself, wait a minute, Michael, that sounds like explicit instruction. And it is. I know there's other sessions at the conference where you're going to talk explicitly about explicit instruction, HLP number 16. But HLP number 16 is so critical, I can't talk about effective classroom management without talking about it. All right. Take a look at this slide. I look at this as my brunch menu, all of the things I might order when it comes to using explicit instruction: clear language, use of cues, breaking complicated content into chunks, making connections to prior learning for kids, highlighting and delivering to students a range and varied examples, and sometimes non-examples. Use an engaging, deliberate, and predictable pace, providing our students with a variety of opportunities to respond to prompts, delivering high-quality feedback, modeling to show them, here's what I'm thinking as I'm doing this task, providing guided practice on a regular basis, and then independent practice when students are ready. The I do, we do, you do sequence. Using explicit instruction to teach and reteach expectations will set you up to be effective. So if you feel in your repertoire, hey, I don't know about this. Like, this is the first time I've seen explicit instruction described in this way. This is the next PD I want you to undertake. I want you to think about, how can I learn more and become more effective about explicit instruction? Here's one of the ways you can do that. So on the highleveragepractices.org website, go and watch the video that was produced around explicit instruction from a few years ago. I also recommend this book by Anita Archer and Charlie Hughes. I wish I got a nickel for every time I recommended this book to somebody or assigned it to my own students, because I would have more money. But this is a terrific book. And if you don't have this on your shelf, I really can't recommend it strongly enough. So when you're teaching an expectation or reteaching expectations around your classroom management for what you expect your students to do, you're going to use these elements of explicit instruction to do it. Okay, so that means you're using clear language. Kids are having lots of chances to respond. You're not just talking like I'm talking to myself right now in my office at work. You don't want to do that. You want to have lots of chances for kids to interact. And you also want to be giving your students lots of feedback. Again, it's not just an event where I say, hey, good job paying attention. I want to say, I really like the way you're paying attention, but I want to put that within the context that's broader of what I'm doing and as part of my functional relationship with the student. One of the most important things that happens with teachers is they just assume kids know what to do. They just assume kids know how to behave. And this is just about the worst assumption you can make. This is especially true, those of you at the middle school and high school who are here today. You know, your science teachers, social studies teachers, or special ed folks who work in those discipline domains, who support general ed teachers. They just assume you're 15 years old. You know how to behave in school. I don't think that's true. It's not just because of this cohort coming out of COVID. There is just a lot of students out in the world, and they are not always knowledgeable. And when I just assume wrongly that you know what to do, I'm going to start giving out consequences for kids when perhaps it's a learning error. Again, they don't know what to expect. So to promote a positive classroom community, which is the absolute goal of HLP number 7, I want to have clear routines. This is what I expect. This is what I don't expect. This is what I don't want to see. And being really clear and upfront, using explicit instruction to help support kids' learning of those routines and learning those expectations. You still, no matter what you're teaching, whether you're elementary, middle, or high school, you want to use clear language and provide plenty of opportunities to respond with specific praise and feedback for your kids. Part of effective classroom management is to have active supervision. So as I'm teaching and reteaching expectations and making sure that students are following those expectations, I need to be out in the classroom. I can't sit at my desk, behind my desk, and make that happen. Okay, so I need to be scanning the classroom, continuously circulating, and continuously interacting with students. Every chance I get to have a positive interaction with a student, even if it's non-academic, it all goes in that piggy bank of building a positive foundation of trust and respect, that even when I need to take a little bit of money out of that account to say, quit doing that, there's still enough left in there that they know, hey, this teacher cares about me, they trust me, and I can see that I'm just making a mistake. I'm being goofy. I'm a little bit off track, and they want me to get back, and I'll do it. But a kid who doesn't respect, doesn't trust you, that's not how it's going to go. When you say, quit doing that, they're going to say, no, I'd rather keep doing it, but using the F word potentially, or kicking over a desk, or doing something else really inappropriate. And kids will only do that when there's a lack of trust and respect. You want to make sure that within your classroom, you have 3 to 5 positively stated and displayed expectations. These can be things like be safe, be respectful, be responsible, keep your hands to yourself, and anything like that. You want to have these set up for your classroom. Even those of you at the secondary level, be responsible, be respectful, and then define explicitly what that means is what you want to do. So then kids know, even within this middle school science classroom, being responsible means we handle the goggles and the chemicals we're going to be doing our lab with in a very special, specific way. For kindergartners, this is like all you do, right? For a little while anyway. You want to make sure that the expectations and the routines that you're teaching to your students are observable. Okay, so they're clear, that I'm able to say, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and this is exactly how you do it. When you are reteaching and teaching, you want to refer back to those expectations. Steve, remember, my expectation is for you to be respectful during vocabulary time. That means eyes on me, notebook open, pencil in hand, and you're getting the notes into your notebook. I can see right now, your notebook's closed, your pencil's out of your hand. Let's see you get back on track and show me the respect that we expect during this classroom. I know you can do it, okay? That all sounds a lot different than, Steve, damn it, open your notebook. We have to control ourselves with our emotions. It's hard, when the 12-year-old or any age kid that we teach, is being defiant at some level, and to not take it personally. But that's what we have to train ourselves to do. We want to give kids a lot of examples of what it is we're looking for them to do. And it's okay to give non-examples sometimes, but we don't want to do too much in terms of the non-examples. I always want to be incorporating this feedback and praise when I'm giving kids information about the extent to which they're meeting or not meeting my expectation. And I have to confirm students actually understand. Remember, if you're at an Indiana CEC sponsored event, you're probably working with kids with disabilities in some capacity, right? So we have students who just, the hallmark of them is they have a hard time learning things and performing certain behaviors. Kids with emotional behavioral disorders, these kids have a very hard time regulating themselves. So we have to confirm that they really know what we want them to do as we move on. So here's some examples of the positively stated expectations that are posted and defined. So our in class, we're respectful, responsible, and safe. Okay, you'd find a poster like this in just about every elementary school in America, and a version of it in middle and high schools. But to be respectful, that means you're going to raise your hand, be helpful to others, use kind words. To be responsible, you're going to be prepared, follow directions, be on time. To be safe, stay in your space, keep hands and feet to yourself, and store your materials where they're supposed to be, especially when they're, science materials or something like that that could be dangerous. We want to say to the kids in the clearest, most positive words we've got, this is what being respectful in here looks like. And being respectful during recess is different than being respectful in the bathroom. And being responsible is different during vocabulary time than it is at circle time. It's being really clear throughout the day so kids can't mistake what you were thinking for when you laid down these expectations. You can't just say, be respectful, be responsible, without this additional context. It's not enough. You have to teach a lesson and then be prepared to reteach that lesson. Getting kids input when you're teaching expectations can help them to take ownership, which can increase the likelihood that they will follow your expectations, which is really important. And you want to make sure that your routines and expectations are clear and observable. Okay, so if she doesn't know what you're expecting, how is she going to perform the task that you're asking? So you want to make sure, like your IEP goals that you write, you need them to be measurable and observable, right? Classroom expectations work the exact same way. When you're teaching, go out of your way to say, oh, Quan, I really appreciate the way that you are showing respect right now during our language arts debate. I like how you're making eye contact, you're listening to the other side, and then making an appropriate reply. Great job showing respect. Keep up the good work, man. Okay, something like that. And give kids lots of examples of following directions and following expectations. Here's what it looks like. Everybody, how can you see that Billy here is following expectations for getting his notebook? What do you notice him doing? Quiet at his seat. Yeah, that's right. Good point. He's putting his stuff away right away and then sitting back up straight, making eye contact to signal he's ready. I love that. Way to go. You're really paying attention. Now let's everybody practice being respectful, putting our materials away. It sounds crazy sometimes to think like, geez, do we really need this level of nuance when it comes to these simple tasks? Yes. Yes, you do. Especially when teaching kids with disabilities, especially when teaching English learners who are from literally another country, especially when teaching kids who are struggling. They don't know, even if it's so self-evident to us, that doesn't mean that's the case for them. I don't mind giving kids non-examples, but when I do, it just opens the door for shenanigans. When I act silly or I ask a student to act silly, that can often lead to problems, because you're just inviting off-task behavior is what it comes down to. I mentioned this earlier, really making sure that your kids really understand the expectations. This can be done in a variety of ways. Just asking is one, Jen, tell me, how do you show respect right now? But it could also be, no, show me. Do it. If you know what it means to be responsible during our social studies time, let's see you do it right now. Okay, so there's a variety of ways that you can confirm that they know. And remember, when you're teaching anything for the first time, we want to make sure that we're providing lots of guided and independent practice, because we can't just say it and now they got the booster shot and now they know how to do it. Okay, one lesson, one time is not going to be enough for kids, especially the kids we're worried about, kids with disabilities and others who struggle. They're not going to learn anything after one exposure, one lesson, right? We need multiple lessons, multiple repetition. Treat behavior the exact same way you treat academics. Okay, we talked about the importance of praise and redirection for letting kids know you're meeting my expectations, you're doing a great job. I really appreciate that you're here today. Or my expectation is to be respectful or responsible. I need to see that you're doing that right now. I'm going to come back in 10 seconds and show me that you're doing it. Something like that. This is something teachers do. So our school year has started within the last month, right? And on the first day of school, second day of school, sure, I take time to lay out, here's my classroom expectations, here's what we're going to do. There's the poster on the wall, and then they're not mentioned again, or maybe they're mentioned after Christmas break or something like that. And we really want to think, no, we need on the regular, after a long weekend, certainly after extended breaks, but anytime that you are noticing kids are off track, they're not meeting expectations, you see a lot of behavioral errors occurring, here's a great chance to pull out an actual lesson in the middle of the year about behavior, about your expectations, and reminding them, here's what I want to see, here's how I want to see it. This video is an example of one of these such lessons. So this video is of a teacher named Bree Barnes here in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I filmed her multiple times. She's just really excellent in terms of her mastery of being ready, willing, and able to deliver an explicit lesson in the middle of the year around expectations. And I'm going to unshare real fast and make sure when I share that I have clicked the share the sound, because I forget to do that. All right, here we go. Slideshow, current slide.
We're going to go over just a few of our classroom expectations this morning so that you can remember them and end your time as a fourth grader really well. One thing I want to practice, because we've been kind of being really noisy when we've been lining up, is lining up at the door. Who can tell us what that sounds like? When we line up at the door, Corinne, what does that sound like? Level 0. And what does that mean if you're at a level 0, Corinne? Quiet. I shouldn't hear you. I shouldn't hear your feet. I shouldn't hear your voice. What else does it sound like? Sarah? So it's silent, level 0. Anything else? Naomi?
Arguing about what? Where we're
Yeah, we're not arguing. We're being kind. All right. Let's talk about what that looks like when we're lining up at the door. Josh, what should I see?
You should see us not talking and not jumbling up and pushing each other.
So our hands are to ourselves. What else should I see, D'Angelo?
Standing quiet.
Standing quietly. And I'm just going to put standing because sometimes we like to get over there and we like to sit on the table or lean against Moses' desk over there or get up against the mailbox, but we're just standing in our spot. Raheem? Facing forward. Love that one. We'll do one more. What else does it look like, Sarah?
When the lion is trying to get in front of you, don't say, no, you're not supposed to be here.
Right, well, that's what it sounds like because we're at a level 0, but what does it look like, Carter? What am I seeing when I'm looking at our line when we're lined up at the door?
No, I don't know, standing next to nobody.
Yeah, you're behind the person. We are famous for standing next to people, but we need to be behind someone. All right, I need some volunteers who are going to show us the correct way to line up at the door. So when I tell you to line up, I'm going to have Carter, Naomi, Corinne, Heritage, and Sayera. You 5 are going to line up at the door the right way. So show us what it should look like. Line up at the door. Show us the right way to line up at the door.
So what did you notice throughout that short clip? And there's an extended version on my website, vimeo.com/MJK. You could see more videos that I've created like this. So what, she's super positive. This is a lesson, right? She is using explicit instruction to go through and co-construct this graphic organizer T-chart, what it looks like, what it doesn't look like. She's got the kids lining up. She then calls on, hey, what are they doing right? She actually does a round of, okay, now do it the wrong way. And what are they doing wrong? And they talked about that. Very powerful, very effective lesson. And I hope you'll make this part of your repertoire if it's not. The next practice is providing prompts and pre-corrections. Prompts and pre-corrections are going to increase the likelihood, the chances that your students are going to engage in the desired behavior. So a verbal prompt is just something you say. Okay, it's a spoken statement or reminder that's going to help students remember what to do. During online instruction, we are responsible by attending class. That's a verbal prompt. We remind kids of procedures with prompts. Flip your card over on your desk if you need my attention during small group reading. These prompts should be simple but clear, so kids know. I can use images or printed text to help aid students' understanding. Those of you who work with kids with extensive support needs, you might have a communication board or some kind of AAC, assistive technology device, right? That could help kids to know what to do, but giving them clear prompts that way. We use gestural prompts all the time, okay, to let kids know, here's what I expect you to do, but through a physical gesture. Okay, we do this all the time in teaching. And when I do it on a routine basis, it helps kids be successful because it becomes more predictable for them. Creating the predictable environment is what you're looking for, so kids don't have as much chance to make mistakes with their behavior. You want to employ pre-corrections to help kids. I'm about to transition from art class back to reading. What do I think might happen as the kids are standing up and cleaning up their paint trays? You know, they're putting away their materials, they're getting out their reading books. These kids are going to be, there's a chance that paint could get put. There's a chance that they'll be pushing or shoving. There's a chance that they'll be slow, that they'll be talking. I know all of this, right? I've been teaching for more than 2 minutes. I could predict what these kids are going to do. I know these kids really well. A pre-correction heads all of that off at the pass. Before you get up and clean up your stuff and get ready for reading, here's what I expect you to do. Here's what I need you to do. Be really clear about it, really upfront about it, so kids know this is what he's talking about. This is what they expect. Okay, so remember, being in the classroom means respectful, responsible, and safe, and give the examples of each. This all doesn't work, though, if the prompt and pre-correction doesn't occur before the desired behavior is expected to happen. You need to make sure that the expected behavior is explicitly stated and the kids actually understand it. And you want to use the same language you're always using with respect to your classroom expectations. Okay, so we talked about, you know, if they've already done the wrong behavior, you're not giving a prompt or a pre-correction, right? The pre and pre-correct means before. Okay, that's really important. Here's an example. Just a reminder, being safe when packing up for our next class means one person from each group is carefully returning classroom materials while other group members pack up at their tables. Really clear. The behavior that I'm looking for, one person from each group is carefully returning the materials. That's noted. And the same language of the classroom expectations. Hey, just a reminder, being safe means one person, okay? Using positive feedback and praise and its life-giving properties. I talked about this a couple times already, but it's so important. Rob Horner from Oregon, he's retired now, and George Sagai from Connecticut, they always talk about this. These are the, you know, the godfathers of all of this. And they always talk about treating behavioral problems like learning errors. You know, when a kid has trouble in reading or mathematics or writing or any academic, we don't yell at the kid for getting it wrong. We say, oh man, I must have taught that incorrectly, or they must have a misconception somewhere along the way. I take an introspective look at, wait, what just happened here, and diagnose, is it did I explain it badly? Are they, you know, not understanding it well? I figure that out, you know, like a detective would do, but we don't do it with behavior, not nearly often enough. And why not? Because a lot of times kids have skill deficits, which means they can't do something, okay? They don't know how, so they can't do a skill that they don't have. That's a little different, though, then a performance deficit. This is your kid with emotional behavior disorder who, yeah, they're perfectly capable of doing it. They're just not going to. Okay. Different scenarios and how you address those kids, right? So when unwanted behavior occurs, we want to clearly reteach expectations. We want to be consistent and fair. God forbid I treat Jennifer one way when she makes a mistake, and I treat Deshonda a different way for doing the same thing. That's going to get picked up on in about 4 seconds, and you're in trouble in terms of losing that relationship, trust, and respect. Whatever punishment you feel like is necessary, if any, it always needs to be fair and consistent. And think about, how is this being perceived? Not just by you. I know how you feel. You know, if you're feeling like you need to give punishment at all, you're already upset about something the kid has done, right? But how is this going to be perceived by the student, by the other students in the classroom? How will it be perceived by co-teachers you work with, by your administrators? How will this be perceived by the family members of this kid? And this is the hardest part, especially about being a classroom teacher, is questioning your own role in what happened. It's definitely not easy, but it's absolutely necessary in terms of helping to figure out, what did I do that triggered this? Because if I've got a middle school student, upper elementary, middle, or high school student who doesn't read well, and I ask them to read out loud in front of the class, and they begin to read, but they stumble and fail over certain words, and the rest of the class starts to laugh. Well, when the kid says, you know, F this, or they kick over their desk or do something else, and I blame them, I say, get out, write a referral or suspension. I did that. I got to know that. I've got to know if I set this kid up to fail in that way and be embarrassed, and then they respond, not in an appropriate way, but in an expected way, and I'm going to blame them? No, that's not how it works. Okay, so we want to be really clear. One practice I really recommend everybody here is the good behavior game, or the good student game. If you're not familiar with the good behavior game, it's a classic. Basically, you're playing students versus teachers. There's a video here. It's a little dated now, but it's still quite good and shows this practice being used. And basically, hey, I'm teachers versus students. If you get more points, you get points when you meet my expectations. I get points when expectations aren't being met. If you're ahead of me with 5 minutes left in class, you're going to get free time on your device. Okay. The research on this is strongest for elementary and middle school, but there is evidence for versions of this at the high school too. Kids love it. And it's you don't use it every day, but strategically, the good behavior game is really effective.
All right, guys, I like how everyone's sitting. Before we start Miss Hatz's activity, here's what we're going to do today. We're going to do a small game of teachers versus students. Now, you guys have probably not played this before, but here's my game. Every time a student is sitting exactly like Mila right now, if you guys want to turn to look at her, every time I see a class that's on task just like Mila is, they get a point. But suppose a lot of you were to start talking. Suppose I would be trying to give instruction, or Miss Hatz's would be trying to go through an activity with you, and we had about a couple people here, a couple people there, a couple people there, not following directions and probably not able to hear what Miss Hatz's is saying because their own mouths are moving and open. And if the teacher has to remind you about that, who do you think that's a point for?
Teachers.
The teachers get a point then. Do we want the teachers to get a point?
No.
We don't want the teachers to get any points, right? We want the students to get a point. So in 3 seconds, I love to see straight backs and hands on top of the table in 3, 2, 1. Perfect example of how students get points. Right there, clean cut. That's awesome, okay? And I have full faith that you guys are going to beat the teachers in our game, because here's why you want to beat us, all right, in our game. You want to beat us because if the students beat the teachers, then at 10:50, when the long hand is on the 10, At 10:50, you will be granted 5 minutes of free talk. Free talk is you at your desk talking quietly to either your neighbor or the person behind you or in front of you. Are we yelling in free talk? No. We're probably just talking like this, all right? It's a moment just to give you guys a break because we all need breaks, right?
Yes.
All right. So students want to win, right?
Yes.
Teachers, we don't want to win, but if we have to win, I guess we will, okay? Capiche?
So what did you notice there? That was made so long ago. Mark Samudra is now a professor at the University of Kentucky. Great teacher. This was his teaching days. And then he went and got his doctorate and is now a professor. Good man. What did you see him do? He's so calm. He's so clear. He's giving pre-corrections. He's giving prompts. He's utilizing explicit pieces of explicit instruction. He's giving feedback to the kids, and he's utilizing this good student game to help set up the success that he and his co-teacher are about to have during this lesson. Okay, so this is a really terrific practice that I recommend. And this is exactly what he was doing. He's using combinations of practices to help support his students' behaviors. And that's what we need to be doing across the school day, using combinations of high leverage and evidence-based practices in academic and behavior spaces to help support our students' needs. So talking about feedback, we've got about 10 minutes left. And here we go, talking about feedback. So you want your feedback to be goal-directed. Okay, that's really important. Here's the goal that we're working on and working towards, and here's where you are on your way to that goal. Again, this is treating feedback beyond good job on that, but good job working toward your goal of being responsible, and being responsible means you're being successful in meeting the goals. Being constructive. Okay, so you're building kids up. You're letting them know, oh, I really like the way you did this, and you're helping to build their capacity towards being successful. It's immediate. You want to let kids know, I just saw you do that, and that was awesome. I really like the way that you were showing respect, working with Daquan on that side project. Really good job, you guys. Appreciate you. Always respectful and positive, letting kids know, we're here together. I really care about you. This is a place where it's not, the friction that can exist, the tension. Who's doing this? You really want to think about how to build relationships by giving genuine feedback that's meaningful to the kid. Okay, just saying yes, 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 good, good, good over again, that's not meaningful to kids. Okay, being frequent and positive. And sometimes, you're contingent, the feedback is contingent on something, but other times it can be non-contingent. It really just depends on the goal. OTRs, opportunities to respond, is really critical as well. So OTRs, if you're not familiar with that lingo, are chances for students to share their knowledge and thoughts about a specific topic. Okay, so that's basically like a formative assessment of sorts. It helps you gain information about kids' understanding and then make adjustments to your instruction accordingly. When you have high rates of opportunities to respond, student engagement is going to increase, and their unwanted behaviors are going to decrease. Why? Because you're not giving them a chance to be off track, because they're constantly ready to answer questions. When academic and behavioral outcomes can be supported hand in hand like OTRs do, you can only expect good outcomes to come from it. OTRs are generally teacher directed, okay, like the questions you provide during explicit instruction, but they don't need to be. They can also be peer directed as kids are working in small or larger groups, and kids are providing OTRs to one another. OTRs take a range of forms: small group, whole group, individual, gestural, choral, deep questions where you're asking, why is photosynthesis critical to life on Earth? Versus rote questions, what sound does C make? Okay, it's good to mix up what kinds of OTRs you provide. Now, there is no deep question for what sound does C make, so you kindergarten, first grade teachers out there, rote questions are what you do. But as you get older, kids get older, you teachers who are at older levels, you want to mix in the deeper probing questions. And remember, what's an easy question for some kids is difficult for others, especially kids with disabilities and language learners. To use OTRs effectively, you want to incorporate a variety of those OTRs. You want to have a high rate of OTRs. Don't have too much teacher talk. Lots of kids' chances. Every kid gets a chance. This is what happens when I watch teachers. They got the 2 kids in the front of the room that answer every question, and I fall in love with those kids. And I use them as a proxy that everybody knows. Because if they know, oh, everybody must know. But I've got 22 kids in the back of the room that never said a word. And they're annoyed by those 2 kids, but they're also glad they're not being called on. So you have to be strategic about actually calling on everybody. You want to use deep questions when you can, because they really get kids thinking and doing the things that your standards require. And college and career readiness requires deep questions, not just rote. All right, HLP 9 around teaching social behaviors. All kids need to learn and use appropriate social behaviors. We in special education, of course, kids with autism, intellectual disability, emotional behavior disorders, we have to take time to explicitly teach appropriate social behaviors. Kids can have trouble with just acquiring new behaviors. They can have trouble with fluency, maintenance, or especially with generalization. They learn how to do a skill in math, but they can't figure out how to do it on the bus ride home. So social skills are these behaviors that can help predict social outcomes. So these are really important. We don't want to sleep on HLP number 9 because behavior management problems are often social skills problems, and academic and behavioral competence are interrelated. Remember earlier when I said, I asked the kid to read out loud during class. He can't do it. He says, kicks over the chair. I say, get out. But I'm making an academic problem a behavioral one, and I don't want to do that. I want to remember that all behavior is not happening in a vacuum, right? Social skills are important. They can and need to be taught, and we need to take time. That's what it comes down to. You need to have a lesson and a lesson plan for social skills instruction for key kids. Okay, I'm going to jump to the end because we're out of time. Here we go. So the FBA. When I said at the very beginning to be curious, not judgmental about student behavior when student behavior occurs, I want you to be thinking about this ABC chart, thinking about antecedents of behavior, the triggers, whether they're slow or long. I want you to be thinking about the behavior that you're trying to figure out. Yes, absolutely. If you want these slides, we'll 100% get those. Send me an email, and I will get them to you. And then the consequences of behavior as well. What is maintaining? Why is the kid doing this? Are they trying to get attention? Are they trying to escape? Are they looking for some tangible reinforcer? Kids with autism who need a stim of some kind. That's really what we want to think about here. And there's a ton of overlap between high leverage practices number 10 and the other HLPs I know you'll be talking about at this conference in terms of collaborating with colleagues and families, thinking about all the data sources from the assessment HLPs. understanding where kids are coming from your colleagues, from family members, from rich and different data sources are all going to give you insight and information about the function of student behavior. And I could do a whole session just on that, but we don't have time. So in conclusion, and I saw somebody raise their hand, but if you put your question or point in the Q&A, I'll address it there. Thanks, Claire, I think it was. So explicitly teaching expectations and social skills on a regular basis, treat behavior problems like learning errors, absolutely critical. Relationships are everything. You could have the strongest bank of teaching practice in the world, but if the kids don't like you and they know that you don't like them and there's no trust and respect built up, it's not going to happen. Feedback is everything. It's not just, yes, good job, you're doing it right. It's a process. You're moving them towards a big end goal. And function of behavior is communication. Behavior is communication. What are they saying? What are they doing? Knowing what they're doing. And when kids do misbehave, be curious about it. Why are they doing this? Instead of being judgmental, which will lead to the office disciplinary referral. I thank you again for being here, but I thank you most for what you do on behalf of families everywhere and educators everywhere and your colleagues who are at universities. We're deeply, deeply appreciative of what you do.
Thank you, Michael Kennedy, for sharing your expertise with us today. Participants, before you leave, please remember to go to the chat and click on the link to provide feedback on this session and the symposium. You can complete the feedback form after each session or at the end of the day. This form is required to receive PGP points for your attendance today. The link is also available on the symposium's main page on SHED. Thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your Breaking Down Barriers Fall Symposium and your day.
Somebody said in the chat that the link you put in there wasn't clickable, Christine.
Okay, let me try again. Okay, let's try that one. Is it still not?
I think because they can't see the chat.
Okay, so I will put it in the Q&A. I don't think I can.
Here, I have a workaround.
Do you? Okay.
There it is. So bit.ly/3LPQTUS. And I don't know if those caps matter or not. They probably do though. There it goes. Looks like Megan got it. Megan got it. Good job, Megan. What I really appreciate about Megan is that she is clearly responsible and respectful and following along and able to quickly diffuse the situation. All right, are we pretty close? We good? All right, thanks, Christine, for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, hope it went well. Hope the attendees appreciated, and let me know if I can help in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.